A Vampire Romance, written by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. Smoke and Shadows. The coffee in my travel mug had gone cold hours ago, but I kept sipping it anyway. 3 a.m, and my entire body ached in ways that 26 years of life hadn't prepared me for. 16 hours. That's how long I'd been on my feet in the emergency room at Mercy General, moving from one crisis to the next without time to breathe or think or remember why I'd chosen nursing in the first place. My Honda sat in the back corner of the employee parking lot where I'd left it yesterday afternoon. Yesterday felt like another lifetime. I fumbled with my keys, my fingers stiff and clumsy from exhaustion. The October air cut through my thin scrubs, raising goosebumps along my arms. I should have grabbed my jacket from my locker, but the thought of walking back inside that building made my chest tight. I just wanted my bed. My small, unmade bed in my tiny apartment with the leaking faucet and the neighbor who played bass at 2 a.m. Home had never sounded so good. The engine turned over on the second try, sputtering before settling into its familiar rough idle. I pulled out of the lot slowly, my headlights cutting through the darkness of the empty streets. This part of the city was abandoned at this hour. The businesses that lined these blocks closed by 6, leaving nothing but empty storefronts and the occasional homeless person huddled in doorways. I was 3 blocks from the hospital when I saw the smoke. At first, I thought I was imagining it. Exhaustion did strange things to perception. But no, there it was again. A thin gray stream rising from somewhere off to my right, between 2 buildings. I slowed the car, peering through the passenger window. The old Morrison building. I'd driven past it 1,000 times. 5 stories of brick and broken windows, condemned for as long as I'd lived in this city. Smoke poured from a second-floor window now, thicker than before, dark and wrong against the night sky. I should keep driving. Call 911 from my apartment. Let the fire department handle it. Every rational thought in my head screamed at me to mind my own business and go home. Then I heard it. A sound. Low and pained, barely audible over my idling engine. Someone was inside. I pulled over without thinking, my hands moving on autopilot. The car door opened. Cold air rushed in. My feet hit the pavement, and suddenly I was running toward the building, toward the smoke, toward whatever disaster waited inside. The front entrance hung open, one door torn completely off its hinges. Glass crunched under my shoes as I stepped through. The smell hit me immediately. Smoke, yes, but something else underneath. Metallic. Copper. Blood. Hello? My voice echoed in the empty lobby. Is anyone here? No answer. Just the crackle of flames somewhere above me and that smell growing stronger with every breath. The stairs were to my left, concrete and surprisingly intact. I took them 2 at a time, my exhaustion forgotten in the surge of adrenaline flooding my system. Smoke thickened as I climbed. By the second-floor landing, my eyes were watering and my lungs burned with each inhale. The hallway stretched ahead of me, dark except for the orange glow coming from a room at the far end. Flames licked around the doorframe, hungry and spreading fast. Hello? I called again, pulling my scrub top up over my nose and mouth. The fabric did nothing to filter the smoke. If you're in here, you need to get out now. Movement. A shadow in the doorway of a room halfway down the hall. Not the burning room, but close enough that it would be soon. I ran toward it, my heart hammering against my ribs. The door was partially closed. I shoved it open and stumbled inside, coughing so hard I could barely see. The smoke was thinner here, but not by much. I blinked rapidly, trying to clear my vision. There, on the floor near the far wall. A figure, unmoving. I dropped to my knees beside him, my hands already reaching for his neck to check for a pulse. Male, tall, dressed in dark clothing that looked expensive, even covered in dust and debris. His skin was cool under my fingers. Too cool. But there, faint and thready, I felt it. A heartbeat. Then I saw the stake. Wooden, thick as my wrist, driven into his chest just right of center. 2 centimeters to the left and it would have pierced his heart. Blood soaked his shirt, dark and wet, pooling beneath him on the concrete floor. What the hell had happened here? No time to think about it. The smoke was getting worse. The heat from the hallway pressed against my back. We had maybe 2 minutes before this entire floor went up in flames. I grabbed his shoulders and pulled, He was heavy, dead weight that barely moved despite my efforts. I repositioned myself, hooked my arms under his armpits, and pulled again. This time he slid a few inches across the floor. The smoke made everything harder. My eyes streamed tears. My lungs screamed for clean air, but I kept pulling, kept dragging this unconscious stranger toward the door, one agonizing inch at a time. The hallway was worse. Flames had spread to the ceiling now, eating through old wood and insulation. I could feel my phone in my pocket, but when I tried to pull it out, the screen was dark, cracked, ruined by heat or smoke, or my fall to the floor. No time to worry about it. I got behind the man again and dragged him toward the stairs. His head lolled against my chest. Blood from his wound smeared across my scrubs. I didn't care. I just needed to get him out. Get both of us out before this building became our tomb. The stairs were a nightmare. I had to go backward, step by agonizing step, supporting his weight and praying I didn't slip. My legs shook. My arms burned. But somehow, impossibly, we made it to the ground floor. The cool night air hit my face like a blessing. I dragged him another 20 feet from the building before my strength gave out completely. We collapsed together on the sidewalk, both of us covered in soot and blood and smoke. I rolled onto my back, gasping, staring up at the stars barely visible through the city's light pollution. My entire body trembled. I'd just dragged an unconscious man with a stake through his chest out of a burning building. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat. What was my life? The man beside me hadn't moved. I forced myself upright, my nurse training kicking back in despite the absurdity of the situation. Airway, breathing, circulation, the basics. His airway was clear. He was breathing. Shallow but steady. Circulation was the problem. That stake. I needed to remove it, needed to stop the bleeding. But doing that here on the sidewalk with no supplies was asking for him to bleed out in minutes. My car. I could get him to my car. Drive to the hospital. Let the ER docs handle this nightmare. I staggered to my feet and somehow, using reserves of strength I didn't know I had, managed to get him into my back seat. He was still unconscious, still bleeding, still dying slowly from whatever had happened in that building. I drove faster than I should have, my hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. But I didn't go to the hospital. Some instinct stopped me. The wooden stake. The abandoned building. The way his skin was too cool, his heartbeat too slow. This wasn't a normal assault. This was something else. Something that wouldn't have normal explanations. I went to my apartment instead. Second floor of a converted house, barely 600 square feet. But it was mine. I got him up the stairs through sheer stubborn will and desperation. My neighbors' doors stayed closed. No one came to help or ask questions. Just another night in a building where people minded their own business. Inside, I laid him on my couch, and finally, got a good look at what I'd saved. He was beautiful. Even unconscious and dying, there was no other word for it. Sharp features that belonged on marble statues. Black hair that fell past his shoulders, matted with blood and ash. High cheekbones, a thin scar along his left jaw that somehow made him more striking instead of less, and the stake buried in his chest. I gathered supplies, clean towels, antiseptic, my limited first aid kit. This was so far beyond my training it was laughable, but I was all he had. I positioned my hands around the stake, took a deep breath, and pulled. It came free with a wet, horrible sound. Blood welled from the wound immediately. I pressed towels against it, applying pressure, watching the white fabric turn crimson in seconds. Then his hand shot up and grabbed my wrist. I screamed. Couldn't help it, because his eyes were open now, and they were red. Not bloodshot, not irritated. Red. Completely, impossibly red, glowing faintly in the dim light of my apartment. You. His voice was rough, barely more than a whisper, but it carried weight. Authority. You pulled me from the flames. I tried to pull back. His grip tightened, not painfully, but immovable. You were dying. I had to. Those red eyes studied me, intense and unblinking, when I could not defend myself. when I was helpless. Something shifted in his expression. No one has done such a thing in 300 years. I don't understand. My voice shook. What are you? His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. What do you think I am, Claire Hoffman? I hadn't told him my name. Couldn't have, but somehow he knew it anyway. And that terrified me more than the red eyes or the impossible wound or any of it. I think I made a mistake, I whispered. No. He sat up slowly. His free hand pressed against the wound in his chest. The bleeding had already slowed impossibly fast. You saved my life when I was vulnerable. That binds us now. You are mine, Claire. Under my protection. Forever. The word forever hung in the air between us, heavy with implications I couldn't begin to understand. Then my apartment door exploded inward. Chapter 2. Gilded Captivity. 3 men dressed in black tactical gear poured through my shattered doorframe. I didn't have time to scream before the stranger on my couch moved. One moment he was bleeding and broken. The next he was on his feet, placing himself between me and the intruders, with fluid grace that defied the hole in his chest. His hand shot out and caught the first attacker by the throat. There was a wet crunch, then the man crumpled to the floor, dead. Just like that, the second attacker pulled a knife. My stranger caught his wrist, twisted, and the blade ended up buried in its owner's heart. The man's eyes went wide. He fell without a sound. The third tried to run. My stranger was faster. He moved in a blur of motion I couldn't track, appearing behind the fleeing man in the doorway. A single strike to the back of the head, and the third body joined the others. The entire encounter lasted maybe 15 seconds. I stood frozen, my back pressed against the kitchen counter, watching this beautiful, terrifying creature dispose of 3 trained killers without breaking a sweat. He turned to face me. Those red eyes had faded to a dark crimson now, almost brown in the dim light. Blood stained his shirt, his hands, his face. He looked like something from a nightmare. We need to leave, he said, his voice calm despite the carnage. Now. I'm not going anywhere with you. The words came out steadier than I felt. I don't even know your name. Lucien. He stepped over the bodies without looking down. Lucien Valtieri. And you saved my life, which means those who want me dead now want you dead as well. Your apartment is compromised. They know you're involved. If you stay here, more will come. I wanted to argue. Wanted to call the police, call someone, do anything except trust this stranger who had just killed 3 people in my living room. But the bodies were real. The shattered door was real. And somewhere in the past hour, my normal life had ended. Fine, I whispered. Let me grab my things. No time. He was already at my side, his hand on my elbow. We go now. He led me down the back stairs, avoiding the front where more men might be waiting. His car was parked in the alley behind my building. Black, sleek, expensive. The door opened with a soft click, and he guided me inside. The leather seats were cold against my smoke-stained scrubs. I watched the city blur past the tinted windows, my mind struggling to process everything that had happened. The fire, the stake, the red eyes, the bodies. What are you? I asked again. You know what I am. He didn't look away from the road. You knew the moment you pulled that stake from my chest. You're intelligent, Claire. You work in medicine. You understand that humans don't survive wounds like that. That humans don't have red eyes. That humans don't move the way I move. Vampire? The word felt ridiculous on my tongue. You're telling me vampires are real? Among other things? Yes. And those men who broke into my apartment? Sent by Vincent Cross. A rival who believed he could claim power by eliminating me while I was vulnerable. His jaw tightened. He failed, thanks to you. Now he'll want to eliminate the witness who saved me. The drive took 30 minutes. We left the city proper, winding through hills dotted with mansions that grew larger and more isolated with each mile. Finally, we turned onto a private road guarded by gates that opened automatically. The house at the end of the drive wasn't old or Gothic. It was modern, all clean lines and dark glass, built into the hillside with strategic precision. Security cameras mounted at every corner, motion sensors hidden in the landscaping. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress. Welcome to my residence, Lucien said, pulling into an underground garage that could have held 20 vehicles. "You'll be safe here." I climbed out of the car on shaking legs. The garage alone was larger than my entire apartment. Everything gleamed, sterile and perfect. Cold. An elevator took us up to the main floor. The doors opened into a massive entrance hall with ceilings that soared 2 stories high. Modern art hung on white walls. Marble floors reflected recessed lighting. It looked like something from an architecture magazine, beautiful and utterly impersonal. "Father," I turned at the voice. A young man stood at the top of a floating staircase, his arms crossed over his chest. He looked maybe 20, with black hair cut shorter than Lucien's and the same unnatural stillness. His eyes were red too, though lighter than Lucien's had been, crimson rather than wine dark. "Julian," Lucien acknowledged. "This is Claire Hoffman. She'll be staying with us." Julian's gaze raked over me, taking in my filthy scrubs and soot-stained skin. "You brought a human here, a stranger, after an assassination attempt." His voice dripped with disdain. "Have you lost your mind? Watch your tone." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Claire saved my life when I couldn't defend myself. She is under my protection now. She's a liability." Julian descended the stairs with inhuman grace. "Vincent knows about her, which means everyone will know about her by dawn. You've handed them leverage, Father. Weakness they can exploit." "Enough." Lucien's voice cut through the tension. "Claire, this is my son, Julian. He's young and occasionally forgets his manners. Julian, you will treat our guest with respect, or you will find yourself relocated to the Seattle territory. Permanently." Julian's jaw clenched, but he nodded stiffly. "As you wish." He turned and disappeared down a hallway without another word. I stood there feeling like an insect under a microscope. "Your son seems thrilled about my presence. Julian is protective." Lucien gestured toward a different hallway. "He'll adjust. Come, I'll show you where you'll stay." The guest suite was larger than my apartment had been. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city lights far below. A king-sized bed dominated one wall. An attached bathroom featured a soaking tub and a shower with multiple heads. Everything was pristine, expensive, and completely foreign. "There are clothes in the closet," Lucien said from the doorway. "They should fit. I'll have proper measurements taken tomorrow for anything else you need." "How do you know my size?" The question came out sharper than I intended. "I know many things about you, Claire. I accessed your medical records, your employment history, your financial information. It was necessary to understand who saved my life and whether you posed a threat. Fury, hot and sudden, flooded through me. You invaded my privacy, without permission, without even asking. I did what was required to protect myself and those under my authority." "And my debts?" My voice rose. "Because I know I didn't pay those off. I don't have that kind of money. But when I checked my banking app, later, at your house, on a borrowed phone, everything was zeroed out. Student loans, credit cards, the medical bills from my mother's funeral, all paid in full." He didn't deny it. "You were vulnerable. Debt makes people easy to manipulate, easy to control. Anyone who researched you would have seen those weaknesses and exploited them. I simply removed the leverage before it could be used against you. You had no right." I stepped toward him, my exhaustion forgotten in the face of this violation. "That was my life, my choices, my responsibility. You don't get to just swoop in and make decisions for me because you decided I'm yours now. I saved you from years of financial servitude. I didn't ask you to. I saved your life because you were dying, not because I wanted to be purchased and kept like some kind of pet." My hands were shaking. "I'm a person, Lucien, not a possession you can manage and control." For the first time since he'd woken on my couch, something flickered in his expression. Not quite remorse, but recognition at least. He studied me for a long moment, those dark eyes taking in my anger, my fear, my stubborn refusal to submit. "You're correct," he said finally. "I overstepped. The vampire world operates by different rules than the human one. Power, control, protection. These are currencies we understand. But you are not vampire. You did not agree to our ways when you pulled me from that fire." "No, I didn't. What would you have me do?" The question surprised me. I'd expected argument, dismissal, or worse. Instead, he waited, genuinely listening. "Don't make decisions about my life without consulting me first," I said. "I understand I'm in danger now. I understand I can't go back to my apartment or my job, but that doesn't mean I surrender every choice. If you want to help, ask. If you want to protect me, explain why and give me options. Don't just act and expect gratitude." Lucian nodded slowly. "You have my word. No more unilateral decisions regarding your life." "Good." Some of the tension drained from my shoulders. "Now explain what the hell is happening. All of it. What you are, why someone tried to kill you, what this vow means. That," he said with the ghost of a smile, "will require coffee. And perhaps something stronger. Come, we have much to discuss." Chapter 3. Learning to Trust. 2 weeks passed in a blur of revelations and routine. Lucian's mansion became my gilded prison, beautiful and suffocating in equal measure. I learned the layout quickly, mapping escape routes I knew I'd never use. The library on the second floor held more books than I could read in a lifetime. The kitchen was stocked with human food, despite the household's dietary restrictions. The gym in the basement looked like something from a professional training facility. I explored during the nights when the house was most active. Vampires operated on an inverted schedule, awake from sunset to sunrise. My nursing shifts had prepared me for nocturnal living, but the adjustment still left me disoriented and tired. Julian kept his distance for the first week. I'd catch him watching me from doorways, his crimson eyes tracking my movements with suspicion. He never spoke unless absolutely necessary, and then only in clipped sentences that made his disdain clear. On the 8th night, I found him in the library reading a leather-bound book that looked older than any artifact I'd seen outside a museum. I'd come looking for something to occupy my mind, anything to stop the endless spiral of anxiety about my former life, my job, my friend Nora, who probably thought I'd abandoned her without explanation. "Do you ever get bored?" I asked, settling into a chair across from him. "Living this long, seeing the same patterns repeat over centuries?" Julian looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "That's what you want to discuss?" "I'm curious. You've been alive for 200 years. Does anything still feel new?" He closed the book carefully. "You're different than the humans Father usually associates with. Most are either terrified or opportunistic. You're just curious." "I'm terrified," I admitted. "But curiosity is how I deal with fear. Understanding helps." Something in his expression softened marginally. "To answer your question, yes, boredom is real. But humanity continues to surprise me. Technology evolves. Art evolves. People find new ways to be both brilliant and foolish. It keeps existence interesting. And your father? What keeps him interested?" Julian's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Power. Justice. The challenge of maintaining order among beings who have no natural predators except each other." He paused. "And now, apparently, you. I'm not trying to be interesting. I just saved someone who needed help, which is exactly why you interest him. Genuine altruism is rare in our world. We operate on transactions, debts, and obligations. You acted without expectation of reward." He leaned forward slightly. "Do you understand what that means to someone like my father? Someone who spent 800 years surrounded by people who want something from him. I hadn't thought about it that way. To me, pulling Lucian from that burning building had been instinct. The same instinct that made me become a nurse. You helped people who were hurt. It wasn't complicated. "Tell me about the vow," I said. "The protection he promised. What does it actually mean?" Julian's expression grew serious. "It means he physically cannot allow harm to come to you. If you're threatened, his nature compels him to intervene. If you die while under his protection, he suffers consequences beyond shame. The vow binds him on a fundamental level." "That sounds like slavery. It's a bond. Different. He chose it when he woke and realized what you'd done. No one forced his declaration." Over the following nights, Julian warmed to me incrementally. He explained vampire hierarchy, the complex web of territories and allegiances that spanned the globe. Lucian wasn't just powerful. He was the vampire king, the final authority all others answered to. His word was law. His judgments were absolute. Why would anyone challenge that? I asked during one of our conversations. Because power is addictive, and some vampires remember when there were different rulers, different laws. Vincent Cross leads the largest faction of those who want change. The name sent ice through my veins. Vincent, who'd sent assassins to my apartment, who wanted Lucian dead. I started observing Lucian more carefully. He held meetings in a formal conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows that revealed the city lights far below. Vampires came and went, reporting on territorial disputes, asking for judgments on infractions, seeking permission for various actions. I watched from the shadows of an adjoining room, observing how he commanded absolute attention without raising his voice, how he listened to both sides of disputes before rendering decisions that were harsh but fair, how he balanced mercy with consequences in ways that reminded me of the best judges I'd seen during hospital legal proceedings. One night, a vampire was brought before him in chains. Silver chains, I noticed. They burned where they touched skin, leaving red welts. "You fed from a human without consent," Lucian stated, his voice cold. "You violated the most fundamental law I established 3 centuries ago." The chained vampire snarled. "The old ways were better. Humans are cattle, nothing more. The old ways led to extinction attempts and justified vampire hunters." Lucian stood, crossing to stand before the prisoner. "I created laws that allow us to survive in the modern world. Laws that protect both our kind and theirs. You broke those laws. The penalty is exile to the dimension of shadows. 50 years should give you time to reconsider your philosophy." I didn't understand what that meant until Julian explained later. It's a prison dimension. No light, no sensation, just consciousness suspended in darkness. 50 years there will feel like centuries. He'll emerge changed or broken. Either way, he won't break laws again. The brutality should have horrified me. Instead, I found myself understanding the necessity. Lucian governed beings who could kill with impunity, who had strength and speed beyond human capability. Harsh consequences were the only effective deterrent. Somewhere in the second week, the tension between Lucian and me shifted. I'd catch him watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Our hands would brush when passing in hallways, and neither of us would pull away immediately. Conversations that started about vampire politics would drift into more personal territory. "Why medicine?" he asked one night. We sat in the library, him with documents he was reviewing, me with a book I'd been pretending to read. "My mother got sick when I was 20. Cancer. Watching the nurses care for her, seeing how they made her last months bearable. I wanted to do that for others. She died 5 years ago. The bills from her treatment are what buried me in debt." I paused, then corrected myself. "Were what buried me, before you paid them off without asking. I apologized for that." "You did. Doesn't mean I've fully processed it yet." He set aside his papers, giving me his full attention. "I've made many mistakes in 8 centuries, but acting to protect you isn't one I regret, even if my methods were flawed." The air between us felt charged suddenly. Dangerous. I recognized the pull I felt toward him, the way my pulse quickened when he entered a room, but I didn't know if those feelings were genuine or some byproduct of the supernatural vow he'd made. Lucian seemed to sense my confusion because he kept careful physical distance, never touching unnecessarily, never pushing for more than conversation. The restraint was obvious, and somehow that made me want to close the distance more. On the 14th night, everything shattered. I was in the kitchen making coffee when Julian burst in, his face tight with controlled fury. "Nora Graves, your friend from the hospital. Vincent has her." The mug slipped from my fingers, shattering on the marble floor. "What?" Lucian appeared in the doorway, already dressed in dark tactical clothing. "Vincent sent a message. He wants you in exchange for her release. He's holding her at a warehouse near the Port District." "We're going," I said immediately. "We're getting her back." "No." Lucian's voice was firm. "This is an obvious trap. Vincent knows I cannot let you be harmed. He's using your friend as leverage to force my hand. Then we give him what he wants. I can't allow you to walk into a hostage situation with a vampire who wants you dead." Rage flooded through me, hot and clarifying. She's innocent in this. She got dragged into your world because I saved your life. If she dies because you won't let me help, I'll never forgive you." I stepped toward him. "I understand you made some vow. I understand you feel bound to protect me, but you don't own me, Lucian. I get to choose what risks I take." Chapter 4. Blood and Shadows. Lucian's expression shifted. The absolute certainty I'd seen moments before cracked, revealing something underneath. Conflict. He looked at Julian, who stood watching our exchange with careful neutrality. "There might be a way," Julian said slowly, "if we modify the approach. Use Claire strategically, rather than sacrificing her to Vincent's demands." "Explain." Lucian's voice was clipped. Over the next hour, they outlined a plan that made my stomach churn, but gave Nora a chance. I would wear a tracking device embedded in a bracelet that looked like ordinary jewelry. Julian would infiltrate the warehouse location hours ahead of the exchange, positioning himself with allies from Lucian's guard. When Vincent revealed himself, they'd strike. "You understand this is still incredibly dangerous," Lucien said, his eyes boring into mine. "Vincent wants you dead. Being in the same building with him puts you at risk I cannot fully control." "I understand." My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice level. "Nora is innocent in all of this. She's my best friend. I won't abandon her." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. "We leave in 3 hours. Julian will teach you basic defensive maneuvers. If something goes wrong, you need to be able to protect yourself long enough for us to reach you." The training was brutal and fast. Julian moved through holds, breaks, and strikes with mechanical efficiency. My body ached within the first 30 minutes, muscles protesting movements they'd never made before. "Again," Julian commanded after I fumbled a wrist break for the 3rd time. "If someone grabs you, you have maybe 2 seconds before they're strong enough to immobilize you completely. Use those seconds. By the end of 2 hours, I could execute basic escapes and knew where to strike to cause maximum damage. It wasn't enough to fight a vampire, but it might buy me precious moments." The warehouse district at night was exactly as ominous as expected. Abandoned buildings stretched in all directions, their broken windows like dead eyes watching our approach. Lucien drove in silence, his jaw tight with controlled tension. I sat in the back seat, the tracking bracelet cold against my wrist. "Julian is already inside," Lucien said as we pulled to a stop 3 blocks from the target location. "He has 4 guards positioned at strategic points. The moment Vincent appears, they'll move. And if Vincent doesn't show, if he sends subordinates instead, then we adapt." He turned to look at me. "Claire, if at any point you feel unsafe, if your instincts tell you to run, you run. Understood? Protecting Nora is not worth your life. To you, maybe. To me, it is." We walked the remaining distance. The warehouse loomed ahead, rust streaking its corrugated metal sides. A single door stood open, light spilling from within. An invitation. A trap. I stepped through first. The interior was vast and mostly empty. Shipping containers lined one wall. In the center of the space, tied to a chair with silver chains, was Nora. Relief flooded through me. She was alive, bruised, terrified, but alive. Her eyes went wide when she saw me. "Claire, no," she screamed. "It's a trap. You have to run." "I know it's a trap." I kept walking toward her. "But I'm getting you out anyway." "How touching." The voice came from behind a shipping container. Vincent stepped into view, and I understood immediately why Lucien had called him dangerous. He was beautiful, in the way predators are beautiful. Sleek, perfect, deadly. Blonde hair fell to his shoulders. His eyes were the palest blue I'd ever seen, almost white. "The little human who saved our king," Vincent continued, circling slowly. "I've been very curious about you, Claire Hoffman. What makes you so special that Lucien Valtieri would risk everything to protect you? Let Nora go. You have me. That's what you wanted." "Oh, I want much more than that." He smiled, revealing elongated fangs. "I want Lucien broken. I want his empire crumbled. And you, my dear, are the tool that accomplishes both." Movement exploded from the shadows. Julian appeared behind Vincent, moving with lethal speed. But Vincent had anticipated it. He spun, catching Julian's strike and countering with brutal force. They clashed in a blur of motion too fast for my human eyes to track properly. More vampires poured from hidden positions. Lucian's guards engaged them immediately. The warehouse erupted into violence. I ran for Nora, yanking at the silver chains that bound her. They burned my hands on contact, but I didn't care. The locks were complex, beyond my ability to pick. "Behind you!" Nora screamed. I turned just as Vincent broke away from Julian and lunged toward me. Julian threw himself between us, taking a strike meant for my throat. He crashed into a shipping container hard enough to dent the metal. Vincent's hand closed around my throat. He lifted me off the ground effortlessly, my feet dangling as I clawed at his grip. "So fragile," he mused. "One squeeze and you're gone. And with you goes Lucian's vow, his honor, his authority. He'll be destroyed by the shame of failing to protect his sworn charge." Black spots danced across my vision. My lungs screamed for air. Through the haze, I saw Julian struggling to rise, blood streaming from a wound in his side. My hand found something, a piece of broken wood from a pallet. One end splintered to a point. The decorative stake I'd pulled from Lucian's chest flashed through my memory. Wood, through the heart. That's how you kill a vampire. I swung with everything I had. The makeshift stake drove into Vincent's shoulder, missing his heart but hitting something important enough to make him drop me. I fell hard, gasping, my throat bruised and burning. Julian was on him in seconds, the advantage of surprise giving him the opening he needed. They grappled, and this time Julian drove Vincent back, away from me and Nora. Then Lucian arrived. I didn't see where he came from. One moment the space between us and the fight was empty. The next, Lucian was there, moving with a speed that made Vincent look slow. He caught Vincent by the throat in a mirror of how Vincent had held me moments before. Enough. The word carried absolute authority. The fighting stopped. Vincent's allies froze, recognizing they'd lost the moment Lucian entered the battle. "You attacked me when I was vulnerable," Lucian said, his voice calm despite the fury in his eyes. "You kidnapped an innocent human to draw out my protection. You broke our most sacred laws. For this, you will face judgment before the full council. Kill me or I'll never stop." Vincent snarled. "I'm not going to kill you. That would be mercy you don't deserve." Lucian gestured, and his guards moved forward with silver chains. "You'll stand trial. Every vampire in my territory will see what happens when you betray our structure, and then you'll spend the next century in the shadow dimension, contemplating your choices." They dragged Vincent away, still struggling. The other attackers were rounded up efficiently. Within minutes, the warehouse was secured. I crawled to Nora, finally managing to unlock her chains using keys taken from one of Vincent's unconscious allies. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry you got dragged into this." "What are you?" she asked through her tears. "What are they?" "Claire, those men moved like nothing human. And Vincent's eyes—" "I'll explain everything. I promise. But right now, we need to get you somewhere safe." Lucian approached, his expression softening when he saw us. "There's a medical wing at my residence. Dr. Reeves specializes in trauma, both physical and psychological. Nora will be cared for until she's ready to leave." "Vampires?" Nora whispered, staring at him with wide eyes. "You're vampires." "Yes. He didn't try to soften it or lie, and you've been hurt because of our world. I take full responsibility for that." The drive back was quiet. Nora sat between Julian and me in the back seat, her hand gripping mine so tightly it hurt. She stared at Julian with a mixture of terror and fascination. "You saved Claire," she finally said. "That thing was going to kill her, and you stopped him." "She saved my father," Julian replied simply. "That makes her family. Family protects each other." At the mansion, Dr. Reeves, a vampire who looked 60 but was probably ancient, examined Nora gently. He prescribed rest, counseling, and time. Lucian gave her the guest suite next to mine, assuring her she was free to leave whenever she wanted, but encouraging her to stay until she felt stable. Over the next 3 days, I divided my time between Nora and my own processing of what had happened. She asked questions constantly, And I answered as honestly as I could. Yes, vampires were real. Yes, Lucian was their king. Yes, I'd saved him from a burning building, and somehow my life had transformed completely in the span of 2 weeks. "Are you afraid?" she asked one evening as we sat on my balcony watching the sunset. "Constantly. But I'm also curious. Drawn to this world in ways I don't fully understand." "Drawn to him, you mean?" "Lucian." She gave me a knowing look. "I see how you watch each other." Heat rose in my cheeks. "It's complicated. Love usually is." On the 4th night after the rescue, Lucian found me in the library. I'd been reading about vampire hierarchy, trying to understand the world I'd stumbled into. "How is Nora?" he asked, settling into the chair across from mine. "Better. Still processing, but better. She wants to go home soon, back to her apartment. Resume her life. I'll provide security, discreet but present. Vincent is contained, but his allies may seek revenge. Thank you." I set the book aside. "For everything. For saving her. For not killing Vincent even though you wanted to. Control is more important than vengeance. The other vampires needed to see that justice through proper channels matters, even for the king." He leaned forward. "Claire, I need to tell you something." My heart rate picked up. "What?" "I'm afraid." The admission seemed to cost him. "I'm 800 years old, and I'm afraid of what I feel when I look at you. The vow binds me to protect you, yes. But what I feel goes beyond that bond. And I don't know if you can feel anything genuine for me when our connection started with magical compulsion." I crossed the space between us, kneeling in front of his chair so our eyes were level. "The vow might have started this. But what I feel isn't magic, Lucian. It's choice. Every day I'm here, I choose to stay. Every conversation we have, I choose to engage. Every moment I spend learning about you and your world, it's because I want to, not because I have to." His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing across my cheekbone. "You make me want to be more than what I am, better than centuries of violence and control have shaped me into. You already are." He kissed me then, and it was nothing like the careful restraint he'd maintained before. This was desperate, hungry. 800 years of loneliness meeting 2 weeks of attraction. I kissed him back with equal intensity, my hands tangling in his hair. When we finally broke apart, both breathless despite his lack of need for air, he rested his forehead against mine. "This changes everything," he whispered. "I know." I smiled. "Good." Chapter 5. Betrayal from Within. The relationship shifted after that kiss. Not all at once, but gradually, like ice melting under sunlight. Lucien's careful distance evaporated. I'd find him watching me from doorways, his expression unguarded for once. Our conversations grew longer, more intimate. We talked about everything. His centuries of existence, my years of nursing, the mundane details of daily life that somehow felt profound when shared. 3 weeks after Vincent's capture, he came to my room late. Not the guest suite anymore, but my room. I'd stopped thinking of it as temporary. "I want to show you something," he said. He led me to the roof. I hadn't realized the mansion had rooftop access, but of course it did. Everything here had layers I was still discovering. The view took my breath away. The city sprawled below us, a carpet of lights stretching to the horizon. "This is where I come when the weight of ruling becomes too much," Lucian said, standing beside me at the railing. "Up here, the problems feel smaller, manageable. Do you regret it? Taking on that responsibility?" "No. Someone needed to create order from chaos. I had the strength and will to do it." He turned to face me. "But I am tired, Claire. 800 years of constant vigilance. Of being the final authority everyone looks to. I forget sometimes what it's like to simply exist without the burden." I reached for his hand. "You don't have to forget. Not with me." He pulled me close then. And the kiss was different from the first. Slower, deeper, full of promise rather than desperation. When he lifted me into his arms and carried me back downstairs, I didn't protest. We made love that night, and it was both tender and intense. His centuries of experience evident in every touch, but tempered by genuine care. Afterward, lying in his arms, I felt something click into place. This wasn't the vow binding us anymore. This was choice. Real, complicated, beautiful choice. But I couldn't live entirely in his world. I needed my own purpose, my own identity beyond being Lucian's protected human. On the 4th week, I made a decision. I'm going back to work, I announced over breakfast. Dinner for him, since his schedule ran nocturnal. Lucian looked up from the documents he'd been reviewing. At the hospital? Yes, I'm a nurse, Lucian. It's what I do. And I can't just hide here forever. Julian, who'd been reading nearby, interjected. You understand the risk? Vincent has allies who may seek revenge. I understand. But I also understand that living in fear isn't living at all. I looked at Lucian. You promised no more unilateral decisions. This is mine to make. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Security will accompany you. Discreet, but present. And I want updates every hour. Every 2 hours, I countered. I'm returning to work, not checking into prison. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. As you wish. Dr. Patterson proved surprisingly understanding when I called. He remembered the family emergency excuse from HR and immediately offered to rehire me with adjusted scheduling. 3 nights a week to start, with options to increase as I readjusted. We've missed you, Claire, he said warmly. The ER hasn't been the same without you. Nora met me for coffee before my first shift back. She looked better. Still thinner than before her kidnapping. Shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there a month ago. But recovering. We'd spent hours together over the past weeks. Me explaining vampire society. Her processing the impossibility of it all. Are you sure you're ready? She asked, stirring sugar into her latte. No. But I need to try. I need something that's mine, you know? She understood. Nora had returned to her own nursing shifts 2 weeks prior, determined not to let trauma define her future. Just promise me you'll be careful, and that those vampire bodyguards Lucian assigned will actually be useful. They will. Julian tested their competence personally. My first shift back was surreal. The familiar chaos of the ER, screaming children, chest pain patients, the perpetual shortage of clean beds, felt grounding. I fell into old rhythms easily, my hands remembering procedures my mind had temporarily forgotten. The security was indeed discreet. I only noticed them because I knew to look. A janitor who cleaned the same hallway 3 times. A visitor who never quite visited anyone. They rotated positions throughout the night, maintaining constant surveillance without drawing attention. Between patients, I texted Lucian updates as promised. His responses were brief but revealed his concern. Be safe. Miss you already. Coming home soon? Home. When had his mansion become home? The investigation into the original attack on Lucian had continued during my absence from active involvement. Julian spent hours reviewing security footage, interrogating captured members of Vincent's faction, tracing communication patterns. What he uncovered disturbed everyone. Someone on the inside gave information to Vincent Cross. Julian reported during a council meeting I'd been invited to observe. Specific details about Father's location that night, his security detail, vulnerabilities in our defensive perimeter. This wasn't opportunistic. It was coordinated. The council members, 12 ancient vampires who advised Lucian on matters of governance, exchanged uneasy glances. Betrayal from within was the worst kind of threat. It meant trust itself had been compromised. I watched from my seat in the corner, noting body language and reactions. My nursing training had made me skilled at reading people, at noticing subtle tells that indicated discomfort or deception. One council member caught my attention. Morgana, a striking woman who appeared perhaps 40, but was actually 600 years old. She sat too still, her face too carefully neutral, while others expressed shock and outrage. After the meeting ended, I pulled Julian aside. Morgana, watch her closely. Why? She's trying too hard to appear unconcerned. Everyone else showed genuine surprise. She looked prepared. Julian's eyes narrowed. I'll investigate discreetly. What he discovered over the following week painted a damning picture. Morgana had been Lucian's lover 2 centuries ago, a relationship that ended when he'd grown tired of her possessive behavior. She'd maintained her council position through competence and centuries of loyal service. but recent communications revealed contact with Vincent Cross in the months before the attack. Julian brought the evidence to Lucian privately. I was there when he reviewed it, watching fury and betrayal war across his features. "She was my friend," he said quietly. "For 600 years I trusted her judgment. And she betrayed me over jealousy? The evidence is conclusive," Julian replied. "She provided Vincent Cross with your location, didn't order the attack directly, but enabled it by removing obstacles. Bring her here. Now." The confrontation happened in Lucien's private study. Morgana entered with her characteristic grace, but her composure cracked when she saw the documents spread across his desk. "You knew," Lucian said, his voice cold. "You knew Vincent Cross planned to kill me and you helped him." She didn't deny it. Instead, she lifted her chin defiantly. "For 200 years I've watched you isolate yourself, refuse connection. Then this human appears and suddenly you're making vows, risking everything for someone who'll be dead in a blink of time by our standards. So you tried to have me killed? I tried to eliminate the threat before you threw away centuries of careful rule for infatuation." Morgana's eyes found mine across the room. "She's made you weak, Lucian. The others see it too. A human influencing vampire affairs. It's disgraceful. Claire saved my life when I couldn't defend myself. That makes her more honorable than you've proven to be." Lucian stood. "You will face exile. 50 years should give you time to reconsider your choices." "Wait," I said, surprising everyone including myself. "Before you sentence her, ask what else she knows. Traitors usually have more information than they initially reveal." Lucian looked at me, then back at Morgana. "Well, is there something else?" Morgana's laugh was bitter. "Oh, there's more. Vincent may be captured, but his plans continue. The benefit gala at Mercy General next month, the fundraiser for the new cardiac wing. He's had people working on it for weeks. Plans to attack during the event, kill humans publicly, force vampire exposure. The chaos would destroy your careful balance between our world and theirs. You'd be forced to step down." Ice flooded my veins. "The hospital benefit? I'm scheduled to work that night. Dr. Patterson asked for volunteers. Precisely why Vincent chose it. He knows you'll be there." "Two birds with one massacre," Morgana smiled coldly. "I'm telling you now, because my exile is guaranteed regardless. Might as well burn everything down on my way out." The room erupted in controlled chaos. Julian immediately began coordinating security measures. Lucien's expression had gone from fury to cold calculation, and I sat there processing the fact that my workplace, the place where I saved lives, was about to become a battleground. "We cancel the event," Julian said. "No." Lucian's voice cut through the discussion. "That shows weakness. Vincent wants us reacting in fear. Instead, we prepare. Turn his trap into ours." He looked at me. "Claire, I won't force you to participate, but if you choose to help, we can use Vincent's expectations against him." I thought about my patients, about the hospital staff who had no idea the danger they'd be in, about the innocent people who'd attend a charity gala with no clue it was targeted for slaughter. "I'll help," I said. "But we do this smart. No unnecessary risks. And we protect every single innocent person in that building." Lucian nodded once, respect clear in his eyes. "Then we have 3 weeks to plan. Let's make sure Vincent regrets ever threatening what's mine." Chapter 6. Fire and blood. The planning consumed the next 3 weeks. Every night, Lucian's war room filled with vampires reviewing blueprints of Mercy General, mapping exit routes, identifying vulnerabilities. Julian coordinated with hospital security under the guise of upgrading systems for the gala. In reality, he was positioning his people throughout the building. I worked with Dr. Patterson on the medical side. He'd aged noticeably since I'd left, the stress of administration wearing on him more than emergency medicine ever had. When I approached him about concerns for the gala, he listened carefully. "You're worried about overcrowding?" he asked, reviewing the guest list. "The cardiac wing is under construction. If there's an emergency, evacuation routes are compromised." I hated lying to him, but the truth was impossible. "I think we should transfer vulnerable patients to other facilities that night. Reduce risk." His eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "That's actually sensible. The insurance alone if something went wrong during a high-profile event. He nodded. I'll arrange transfers. Elective procedures that week get rescheduled. We'll keep the ER staffed, but minimize inpatient census. One problem solved. Fewer innocent people in harm's way. Nora found me in the hospital cafeteria 3 days before the gala. She'd been cleared to return to work full-time, though I noticed she still checked over her shoulder compulsively and avoided being alone after dark. I know what's happening, she said without preamble, sliding into the seat across from me. My coffee suddenly tasted like ash. What do you mean? Claire, I'm traumatized, not stupid. Vincent's people are planning something for the benefit. That's why you've been working with Dr. Patterson to clear patients. That's why there are suddenly new security guards who smell like money and danger. She leaned forward. I want to help. Absolutely not. You've been through enough, which is exactly why I'm offering. Vincent's people kidnapped me, tied me up, used me as bait. You think I'm going to sit home while you risk your life stopping them? Her jaw set stubbornly. I'm a nurse too. If people get hurt, you'll need every trained hand available. I recognize that expression. I'd seen it in my own mirror enough times. This is dangerous, Nora. Real combat, vampires fighting. I know, and I'm still saying yes. She grabbed my hand. You saved me. Let me help save others. The night of the gala arrived with unseasonable warmth. Indian summer bleeding into October, making the formal attire uncomfortable. I wore a black dress Lucienne had chosen. Elegant but practical, with hidden pockets and fabric that wouldn't restrict movement. My hair was up in a style that looked sophisticated, but could be quickly pulled down if I needed to run. The hospital's main atrium had been transformed. Crystal chandeliers borrowed from event companies. Round tables draped in white linen. A string quartet played Mozart in one corner. Donors mingled with doctors and administrators, champagne flutes catching the light. Lucien arrived fashionably late, commanding attention the moment he entered. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my first car, his dark hair pulled back to reveal the sharp lines of his face. When his eyes found mine across the room, something electric passed between us. Ms. Hoffman, he approached with predatory grace. You look stunning. You're not supposed to be here until later. The plan had him arriving after the attack began, appearing to respond to crisis rather than anticipating it. Plans change. Julian has 20 vampires positioned throughout the building. If Vincent is going to strike, it will be within the next hour, before guests start leaving. His hand found the small of my back, the touch possessive and reassuring. Stay close to me. We circulated through the crowd. I introduced him to Dr. Patterson, who seemed charmed, despite clearly recognizing Lucien as far too wealthy and influential to be genuinely interested in cardiac wing funding. Nora worked near the registration table, checking coats and smiling warmly, while her eyes constantly scanned the room. The first hour passed without incident. Speeches were made. Donations were pledged. The quartet shifted from Mozart to something contemporary and upbeat. Guests laughed and networked, oblivious to the tension vibrating beneath the surface. Then the lights flickered. Power surge, someone said. Generator backup kicking in from the construction. But I saw Lucien's expression shift. Saw Julian materialize from the crowd, his face grim. This was it. The doors exploded inward. 15 vampires poured through the entrance, moving with inhuman speed. Guests screamed. Tables overturned. Glass shattered. Within seconds, the elegant gala transformed into chaos. Get them out, I shouted to Nora, already moving toward the nearest exit. Fire protocol now. Training took over. Nora and I directed panicked guests toward emergency exits, our voices cutting through the screaming with practiced authority. Most people ran. Some froze. We grabbed the frozen ones and pushed them toward safety. The fighting was brutal. Lucien's vampires engaged Vincent's forces with lethal efficiency. Bodies moved too fast to track clearly. The sound of impact, flesh on stone, bone on metal, made my stomach turn. Blood sprayed across white tablecloths. Dr. Patterson appeared beside me, his face pale. What the hell is happening? Terrorist attack. We need to evacuate everyone. The lie felt necessary, better than the truth. Can you help? He nodded shakily, then moved toward a cluster of elderly donors huddled near the overturned buffet table. I saw him directing them toward the kitchen exit, his hands steady despite his fear. Then I saw Vincent. He stood near the main entrance, surveying the chaos he'd created with cold satisfaction. His pale eyes found me across the room. Recognition flashed, followed by predatory intent. He started moving in my direction. Julian appeared from nowhere, intercepting Vincent's path. They collided with force that cracked marble flooring. Julian was faster than I'd ever seen him move, but Vincent was older, stronger. They traded blows that would have killed humans instantly. I searched desperately for something, anything to help. My eyes landed on a decorative arrangement. Autumn branches in a tall vase, some of them thick and pointed. Vincent threw Julian into a support column hard enough to leave a visible dent. Julian slumped, blood streaming from a wound in his side. Vincent turned back toward me, lips peeling back from elongated fangs. "The little human who started this all," he said, closing the distance between us. Lucian's precious weakness. I grabbed the thickest branch from the arrangement, its end naturally sharp from where it had been cut. Vincent laughed at my makeshift weapon. "You think that will—" I drove it into his shoulder with everything I had. Missed his heart deliberately. I needed him alive for Lucian's plan, but hit something important enough to make him stagger back. Julian used the distraction to recover, launching himself at Vincent again with renewed fury. They crashed through a decorative fountain, water and blood mixing on the marble floor. A scream cut through the chaos. Dr. Patterson, trying to shield an elderly woman from falling debris. A piece of ceiling tile crashed down, striking him across the head. He fell hard. I ran to him without thinking, dropping to my knees beside his unconscious form. Blood matted his silver hair. Possible skull fracture. Definitely concussion. I needed supplies from the ER. "Nora!" I shouted. She appeared instantly. "Help me move him." We dragged Dr. Patterson toward a side room, away from the main battle. I did a rapid assessment. Stable airway, breathing regular, pulse strong. He'd survive, but he needed imaging and observation. Through the doorway, I saw Lucien arrive. The fighting stopped. Not paused, stopped. Vincent's vampires froze mid-attack, recognizing the absolute authority entering the room. Lucien walked through the destruction with measured steps. His eyes glowed deep red, power radiating from him in waves I could almost see. When he reached Vincent, still struggling with Julian, his voice carried to every corner of the atrium. "Enough." Vincent's vampires dropped their weapons. Literally dropped them, unable to resist the command in that single word. Lucien grabbed Vincent by the throat, lifting him effortlessly. "You attacked innocent humans in a hospital. You violated every law we have. You will stand trial before the full council, and then you will spend the next century in the shadow dimension, contemplating what you've lost." "Kill me," Vincent snarled. "I'll never stop otherwise. Death would be mercy. You don't deserve mercy." Silver chains appeared, brought by Lucian's guards. They bound Vincent and his surviving allies with brutal efficiency. Within minutes, the threats were neutralized. I stayed with Dr. Patterson, monitoring his vitals while Nora coordinated with arriving emergency services. The official story, gas leak explosion during gala, was already being disseminated. Security footage would be edited. Witnesses would have memories that matched the cover story. Lucien found me 2 hours later in the ER, where Dr. Patterson had been admitted for observation. His scan showed minor concussion, no fracture. Lucky. "Is he going to be okay?" Lucien asked. "Yes, he'll recover fully." I looked up at him. "We won?" "We did. Vincent is contained. His allies are captured or dead. The council will meet in 3 days to pass judgment." He pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly. "You were magnificent, brave and brilliant." I leaned into his chest, letting his strength support me as adrenaline finally faded into exhaustion. We'd protected innocent people. We'd stopped Vincent's plan. We'd won. But as I closed my eyes, I knew this was just one battle. Vincent was defeated, but the war for Lucien's position, and my place in his world, was far from over. Chapter 7. Choosing tomorrow. The hospital damage took 3 weeks to repair. The official story, gas leak explosion during charity gala, held up under scrutiny. Security footage had been edited by Julian's technical team. Witness statements aligned suspiciously well, the result of careful vampire influence on human memory. The world remained oblivious to what had truly happened that night. Dr. Patterson spent 5 days in the ICU before transferring to a regular room. I visited him every shift, monitoring his recovery with the same dedication he'd shown his patients for 30 years. The concussion healed cleanly, no lasting damage beyond a scar hidden by his silver hair. "You saved my life," he said on day 7, when he was finally coherent enough for real conversation. "I remember the ceiling coming down. Then you were there, getting me to safety. You would have done the same for me." He smiled, but it was tired. "This incident made me realize something, Claire. I'm 62 years old. I've dedicated my entire adult life to this hospital. And in one night, I came close to dying in the building I've poured everything into." He shifted carefully, wincing at the movement. "I'm going to retire, take the pension, travel with my wife, enjoy whatever years I have left without wondering if today's the day another disaster strikes." The announcement shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. Dr. Patterson had been an institution at Mercy General for as long as I'd worked there. The ER without him felt impossible to imagine. "You've earned it," I said sincerely. "More than earned it. I'm recommending you for my position. Administrative Supervisor for Emergency Services. It's mostly management, coordinating staff schedules, liaising with other departments, but you'd still get clinical time if you wanted it." His eyes held mine. "You have the skills, Claire, the leadership ability, and after what you did during that attack, coordinating evacuations and treating the wounded under impossible circumstances, you've proven you can handle crisis management." The offer stunned me. I'd been a nurse for 5 years. Administrative positions usually went to people with twice that experience, and advanced degrees I didn't have. "I don't have an MSN," I protested, "or any management certification. The hospital will pay for your education as part of the promotion package. Take online courses, complete the degree while you work." He leaned forward slightly. "Think about it at least. Don't say no just because you think you're not ready. None of us are ever ready for the next step. We just take it anyway." The formal vampire trial happened 3 days after my conversation with Dr. Patterson. Lucian invited me to attend as witness to Vincent's crimes. The council chambers were nothing like I'd imagined. No Gothic castle or ancient throne room. Instead, we gathered in a modern conference center downtown, rented under a corporate shell company, the kind of anonymous space where business deals and political negotiations happened daily. 12 clan leaders sat in a semicircle. Ancient vampires from territories across North America, each commanding their own populations, all acknowledging Lucian's ultimate authority. Julian sat to his father's right, a visible symbol of succession and support. Vincent was brought in wearing silver chains that burned his skin wherever they touched. He looked diminished somehow, the arrogance stripped away by weeks of captivity. His pale eyes found mine in the audience and held for a long moment. No remorse showed in that gaze. Only calculation, even now plotting his next move. The proceedings were formal but efficient. Evidence presented. Witnesses called. Vincent's crimes laid out in meticulous detail. Attempted regicide, conspiracy to expose vampire society to humans, assault on innocent civilians, violation of the feeding laws. When given opportunity to speak in his defense, Vincent said simply, "I regret nothing except failure." Lucian stood to deliver judgment. "Vincent Cross, you are found guilty on all charges. The penalty is eternal exile to the shadow dimension. You will remain there in darkness and isolation until such time as you cease to exist, which may be centuries or millennia, depending on your will to endure. You will never again walk in this world. You will never again threaten those under my protection." Guards dragged Vincent toward a ritual circle marked on the floor. He didn't struggle. The defiance in his expression suggested he'd expected death and viewed dimensional exile as victory. At least he'd survive in some form. The ritual itself was brief. Latin phrases I didn't understand. A flash of absolute darkness that seemed to swallow light itself. Then Vincent was gone, pulled into a prison I couldn't comprehend. Morgana's sentencing followed. 50 years exile for her betrayal, with possibility of return if she demonstrated genuine reformation. More merciful than Vincent received, reflecting that her crimes were enabling rather than executing. After the council dispersed, Lucien found me in the corridor outside. He looked exhausted in a way I'd rarely seen, the weight of 8 centuries suddenly visible in the lines around his eyes. "It's done," he said quietly. "How do you feel?" "Relieved, angry, sad." He ran a hand through his black hair, pulling it loose from the tie that had held it back during proceedings. "Vincent was brilliant once. Centuries ago, before ambition corrupted him. He was someone I trusted. Watching him self-destruct over jealousy and pride is tragic in its predictability." I took his hand, threading my fingers through his. "You gave him every chance to stop." "I did. But sometimes people are determined to destroy themselves." He looked at me then. Really looked, seeing past the surface to whatever thoughts I'd been hiding. "Claire, I need to ask you something important, and I need absolute honesty in return." My heart rate picked up. "Okay. Do you want to stay with me? Not because of the vow, not because you feel obligated or safe here, but because you genuinely choose this life?" His grip tightened fractionally. "Because if you don't, I'll release you. New identity, financial security, protection from a distance. You'd be free to live normally again. I won't keep you bound by supernatural obligation if your heart isn't freely given." The question I'd been avoiding for weeks finally spoken aloud. Did I want this? A life split between human medicine and vampire politics, between daylight normalcy and nocturnal danger? Did I want Lucien? Not just the protection and resources he offered, but him, the man who'd existed for 800 years and still managed to be gentle with me. "I need time," I heard myself say, "not to decide if I love you. I already know I do, but to figure out if I can build a life that's mine while being part of yours." Understanding and relief warred in his expression. "How much time?" "A few days. Let me go back to my old routine. See if it still fits." He arranged everything within hours. The new apartment he'd secured after my original one was compromised. 2 bedrooms, safe neighborhood, security system worthy of a government facility. My furniture from storage, my clothes, books, the small pieces of identity I'd accumulated before vampires became real. I spent 3 days there, living the life I would have if I walked away. Work shifts at the hospital, where Dr. Patterson's offer hung in the air waiting for response. Coffee with Nora, who understood what I was doing even if she didn't entirely approve of giving Lucien uncertainty. Grocery shopping, laundry, Netflix binges, all the mundane activities that had filled my existence 2 months ago. It should have felt like relief, freedom. Instead, it felt hollow. Every night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, hyper-aware of the silence. No Lucien beside me, no Julian's occasional sarcastic comments drifting from down the hall. No sense of belonging to something larger than just myself. On the 3rd night, I finally admitted the truth. I didn't want this life anymore. Not because it was bad, but because I'd outgrown it. The woman who'd pulled a stranger from a burning building without thinking had transformed into someone who could coordinate emergency evacuations and stab vampires with makeshift stakes. Going back felt like forcing myself into clothes I'd long since grown out of. I went back on the 4th morning. Lucien answered the door himself, probably having sensed my arrival through whatever supernatural awareness vampires possessed. He looked wrecked, hair uncombed, dark circles under eyes that shouldn't show exhaustion. "I'm staying," I said before he could speak, "but I have conditions." "Name them." "I keep working at the hospital. Part-time, 3 shifts a week. I maintain my human friendships, my human identity. I don't transform into a vampire. Not yet. Maybe not for decades. I want to experience being human for as long as I can." I stepped closer. "And you don't make unilateral decisions about my life ever again. We're partners or we're nothing." Relief transformed his features. "Agreed. To all of it. Even the part where I stay human and age while you don't. Especially that part." He pulled me into his arms, holding me like something precious he'd thought he'd lost. "Claire, I waited 800 years for something real. I can wait another 60 for you to experience your human life fully. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, we'll discuss transformation. But only on your terms. I kissed him then, pouring everything I felt into that contact. Love, yes, but also gratitude, respect, hope for whatever future we could build together. So what happens now? I asked when we finally broke apart. Now we build something new. You take Dr. Patterson's position if you want it. I continue ruling vampire society. And in between, we figure out how to merge two impossibly different worlds into one life that works for both of us. That simple? He laughed, the sound genuine and warm. Not simple at all. Probably the most complicated thing either of us has ever attempted. But worth it. You're worth it. Chapter 8. 2 worlds, 1 life. 3 months passed like pages turning in a book I couldn't put down. The life I'd built felt surreal in the best way. Split between 2 worlds that should have been incompatible, but somehow merged into something uniquely mine. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights belonged to Mercy General. I'd accepted Dr. Patterson's offer, stepping into the administrative supervisor role with equal parts terror and excitement. The position was exactly as challenging as he'd warned. Staff scheduling alone could consume entire shifts, coordinating nurses, techs, and support staff across departments that never stopped operating. Add budget meetings, policy reviews, and liaison work with other hospital divisions. And I understood why he'd retired, but I loved it. The complexity, the responsibility, the way I could implement changes that improved patient care on a systemic level, rather than one person at a time. I'd already established new triage protocols that reduced ER wait times by 15%. Created a mentorship program pairing experienced nurses with new hires. Started a task force examining ways to reduce medical errors through better communication systems. Nora remained my closest ally at work. She'd been promoted to charge nurse, putting her directly in my chain of command, which could have been awkward. Instead, it strengthened our partnership. We met for coffee before every shift I worked, reviewing the previous day's incidents, preparing for anticipated challenges, maintaining the friendship that had survived kidnapping and vampire revelations. You look different, she said one evening, studying me over her latte. Happier, more settled. I feel settled. For the first time in my adult life, I'm not just surviving, I'm actually living. And Lucian? How's the whole dating an immortal vampire king thing working out? I laughed at her phrasing. Surprisingly well. We've figured out a rhythm. He respects my work schedule. I respect his governing responsibilities. We make time for each other despite the complications. Have you thought about the future? Long-term future, I mean. You're aging. He's not. The question I'd been avoiding but couldn't escape forever. I'm thinking about it. But I'm not ready to make that decision yet. I'm 26. I want to experience being human for a while longer before considering transformation. Nora nodded thoughtfully. Just don't wait so long you lose the choice. I've seen what regret looks like in elderly patients. It's not pretty. The other half of my life unfolded in Lucian's world. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday evenings found me at the mansion, learning the intricacies of vampire governance. Julian proved to be an excellent teacher, patient in ways I hadn't expected from someone who'd initially viewed me as a liability. You're thinking about this wrong, he said one night as we reviewed territorial dispute reports. These aren't just political disagreements. They're family feuds that have lasted centuries. You can't approach them with human logic. So what's vampire logic? Honor, debt, and power. Those are the currencies that matter. If you understand what each party owes and what they stand to gain or lose, you can predict their moves. He pointed to a specific case. This clan leader owes my father for intervention during a hunter attack 50 years ago. That debt means he'll support father's position even if he personally disagrees. I absorbed the lessons eagerly, fascinated by the complex web of obligations and alliances Lucian maintained. I started sitting in on council meetings, not as decoration, but as active participant. My outside perspective proved valuable. I noticed patterns vampires missed because they were too close to their own culture. Lucian integrated me into his administration naturally. He'd ask my opinion during strategy sessions, include me in discussions about policy reforms, treat me as genuine partner, rather than protected human. The other vampires noticed. Their initial skepticism gradually transformed into grudging respect, then genuine acceptance. "You're good at this," Lucian said one night, after a particularly contentious meeting I'd helped resolve. "Natural mediator. You see both sides clearly. Years of nursing taught me that. Every patient thinks their emergency is most important. You learn to triage not just medical severity, but emotional need." We'd fallen into comfortable domesticity when schedules aligned. Quiet dinners where he drank wine and I ate actual food. Late nights curled together on the library sofa, me reading while he reviewed documents. Conversations that ranged from philosophy to gossip to mundane complaints about bureaucracy. The physical relationship deepened too. Lucian was infinitely patient with my human limitations, careful never to use more than a fraction of his supernatural strength. But there was nothing restrained about the passion between us. 8 centuries of experience combined with genuine emotional connection created intensity I'd never imagined possible. Dr. Patterson visited once after his retirement, bringing his wife to meet the young woman who saved my life. We had lunch on the mansion's terrace, the older couple charmed by Lucian's hospitality and the view overlooking the city. "You've done well for yourself, Claire," Dr. Patterson said as they were leaving. His eyes held knowledge he didn't voice, recognition that Lucian wasn't quite normal, but choosing not to examine too closely. "I'm proud of the work you're doing at the hospital. The new protocols are already showing results. You taught me well. I taught you medicine. The leadership that was already in you. You just needed the opportunity to show it." Julian and I had developed an unexpected friendship. He still had moments of sarcasm and superiority, but underneath was genuine affection. He'd started calling me his future stepmother, half-jokingly, acknowledging the permanence of my relationship with his father. "You're good for him," Julian said one evening when Lucian was occupied with council business. "I've never seen him this human, vulnerable in ways he hasn't allowed himself to be in centuries. Is that a compliment?" "It's an observation. Also maybe a thank you. He was becoming too isolated, too rigid. You've reminded him why he started this whole thing. Creating a world where vampires and humans could coexist safely. On the first Tuesday of December, exactly 4 months after pulling Lucian from that burning building, I finished a particularly brutal shift at the hospital. 3 traumas, 2 cardiac arrests, and a pediatric case that ended badly despite everyone's best efforts. I walked to my car feeling hollowed out, the weight of lives I couldn't save pressing down. Lucian was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his car with patient stillness. "I texted you I'd be late," I said, surprised to see him. "Julian told me about the child. I thought you might need company." I fell into his arms without another word, letting myself break in the safety of his presence. He held me while I cried, not offering platitudes or false comfort, just solid presence that absorbed my grief. "Come home," he said, when my tears finally subsided. "Skip tomorrow's shift. You need rest." "I can't. We're already short-staffed." "Claire," he pulled back enough to look at me. "You're no good to your patients if you're emotionally depleted. Take one night. The hospital will survive." He was right. I called Nora, who covered without complaint. That night, Lucienne ran me a bath hot enough to turn my skin pink, brought me tea, and sat with me in comfortable silence until the worst of the pain faded to manageable ache. "Thank you," I whispered against his shoulder later, lying in bed wrapped in his arms. "You saved my life. I can certainly handle helping you through a difficult shift." His fingers traced patterns on my back. "Claire, I need to ask something I've been avoiding." "What? Have you thought about transformation? About becoming like me?" The question I'd been expecting but hadn't prepared for. "I've thought about it constantly. The pros and cons. What I'd gain versus what I'd lose. And I'm not ready yet. I'm only 26. There are experiences I want to have as a human first. Maybe children, though that would complicate everything. Definitely growing older naturally for a while. Seeing what I can accomplish with a normal lifespan before deciding to extend it infinitely." I felt him tense slightly. "I understand. Do you? Really? Because I need you to be okay with waiting. Decades potentially. I might not be ready until I'm 50 or 60. Claire. He shifted so we faced each other, his red eyes serious in the darkness. I've existed for 800 years. Most of that time felt empty. Power and responsibility without genuine connection. Then you pulled me from a fire and everything changed. You showed me what partnership looks like. What it means to choose someone every day, rather than being bound by supernatural obligation. His hand cupped my face gently. If you need 60 years as a human to feel complete, I can wait. Hell, I'd wait a century if that's what you needed. Relief flooded through me. You mean that? I've never meant anything more. He kissed me softly. Take all the time you need. Experience everything you want to experience. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, we'll discuss transformation. But there's no deadline, no pressure. You're mine for however long you choose to stay, human or vampire. Forever then. Just not immortal forever yet. Forever it is. 2 weeks later, I stood in the hospital parking lot after another shift. This one mercifully calmer than most. The December air bit cold enough to see my breath. Christmas lights decorated the ER entrance, cheerful against the night sky. Lucian's car pulled up exactly on schedule. Julian sat in the driver's seat, maintaining the discreet security presence that had become normal. Lucian stepped out. Beautiful and dangerous, and mine. Ready to go home? He asked. Which home? I teased. Mine or yours? Ours. Whatever space we're occupying together. I kissed him in the parking lot, not caring who might see. Hospital staff had figured out I was dating someone wealthy. They didn't need to know about the vampire part. I love you, I said against his lips. I love you too. Now get in the car before you freeze. I climbed into the passenger seat, waving at Julian through the rear-view mirror. He nodded once, the closest he got to warm acknowledgement in public. As we pulled away from Mercy General, heading toward the mansion, I caught myself smiling. My life had become impossible to explain to anyone who hadn't lived it. I was dating a vampire king while maintaining a demanding hospital administration job. I split my time between saving human lives and helping govern supernatural society. My best friend knew about vampires. My boyfriend's son was older than my great-grandparents. None of it should have worked. But somehow, impossibly, it did. I'd saved a stranger from a burning building 4 months ago. In return, he'd given me protection, partnership, and a love that transcended the boundaries between human and vampire. He'd sworn to keep me forever, and I'd chosen to let him. Not because of magical vows or supernatural bonds, but because somewhere between pulling him from flames and building a life together, I'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love with the vampire king who'd promised me forever.